Welcome back to the Sam Acho podcast featuring Clif Marshall, where we talk about faith, family, football, and finances. We go first, we give space, and we grow hope. And we love bringing you special guests. And today, we have one of our most special guests.
Yes, we do, Sam. We have Kurt Hester with us today. And currently, Kurt is the Director of Strength and Performance for the Houston Cougars football team. Prior to coming to Houston, he was named the National Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year by FootballScoop.com in 2022 when he was a head strength coach for the Tulane Green Wave. He helped them win an AAC conference championship. He also spent time as the head strength coach for Louisiana Tech. In addition, Coach Hester has worked in the private sector as the National Director of Performance for D1 Sports Training in Nashville, Tennessee, where he led a very successful NFL Combine training program. Coach Hester is married, and he has 3 children. And Coach Hester is currently in the middle of training camp, and he's making time for our podcast today. So thank you, Coach, for being with us.
Hey, it's my pleasure. It's going to be awesome.
Well, it definitely is. Well, I first and foremost, I've known about you for many, many years, and we met probably about 15 years ago. But what I first found out about you wasn't necessarily about the work you've done in strength and conditioning. I found out you grew up down in Louisiana, and when you grew up in Louisiana, you liked to wrestle alligators. So can you tell us how you grew up, number one, and number two, what's the biggest gator you ever caught?
I grew up southwest of New Orleans, like on the coast. It'd be like growing up, on the east coast of Texas. So it was a small Cajun town. My mom's side of the family, they always spoke with Cajun French. And the only thing either you were a shrimper, an oyster fisherman, or you worked in the oil field, or you played sports. And where I'm from, you were looked down upon to go to college. It was like, yes, it was like different. It was like you were not a man if you didn't work in the oil field or work on a ship boat or an oyster boat. And so being the black sheep that I was like, I'm going to play football. I'm out. See y'all later. And I come from a family. My great grandfather was the first Protestant preacher in South Louisiana. And so I grew up, where they thought, because of my personality, I was going to be the next in line. And I was like, wow. I told my mom, who's ordained, I said, I'm a minister of iron. When I was in college, I'm the minister of iron, of lifting weights. That's my calling, and that's where I'm going. But it wasn't really. Well, I guess it's kind of wrestling, because I wouldn't. What you see with alligators, you see with swamp people and all. And they'll pull up the alligator and kind of, break the water, and they'll fight real bad. And then they'll put the gun, shoot it, and they pull in the boat. I would just pull them in the boat, and wrap the rope around their mouth, put my knee on top of their head, tape their head up, and then, take off. So I did it a little different, but I grew up. I was in a swamp at, 5, 6 years old, walking through the swamp, hunting, fishing. So it was just like, that's my home. And if you ever driven like between Lafayette and Baton Rouge, and you see, it's just all swamp and cypress trees and water, that's how I grew up. And that's like where I'm at peace. That's where I'm like, put me there, and I'm more at peace there than anywhere else in the world. And that's kind of it's like my comfort zone. To go there, that's where I just kind of shut things down. And it's people go, oh, it's so ugly. And, it's scary. And I'm like, to me, it's like, it's not. It's just, it's an awesome place. 6 or 7 foot alligators are the best ones to eat. You get any older than that, you get the bigger ones, they're a lot tougher. So, the biggest one I've ever killed was an 11. And I was duck hunting, and he was coming up to try to eat my retriever. So he had to go.
Yeah, no question, Coach. Yeah, go
Coach,
ahead.
I want to ask a real quick one. You said that's your place of peace. When was the last time you got a chance to go back to some of those swamps?
Actually, 4th of July week was, and it'd been a long time, because, football is. It's 7 days. You're never off. And especially Tech is like the top of Louisiana. where I'm from is the very bottom. So it's a 5.5, 6-7 hour drive to get to the coast. So I had a hard time, and then I was in Nashville for a while, and I had a hard time ever getting back. So I actually brought my wife with me, and because she would always even from New Orleans, if you go north towards Jackson, and you cut the edge of Lake Pontchartrain, it's all cypress swamp. And she's like, and I'm always looking at it the whole time. And she's like, why do you stare at us? Because that's home to me. And she's like, and to her, she's from Ohio. It was ugly to her, scary. And so I moved to Baton Rouge when I was in 10th grade. So the guys that I went to junior high with, I went down the bayou and fished with them, with guys I hadn't seen in forever, like junior high almost. And so we were out in a swamp, and it turns into saltwater marsh, and catching redfish and specks. And she was like, "It really is." She was amazed. She was like, "It really is pretty out here," So between there and, if you know anything about the Louisiana coast, Grand Isle is a small island, kind of like Galveston, but not with the big hotels. But it's more of a fishing island where you go and there's fishing tournaments and stuff like that. There's real small hotels, but a lot of $1 million camps. They're 16 feet off the ground, and they're $1 million homes. And like you would see in Florida, but they call them fishing camps. But they're 5 bedrooms, elevators, all that stuff, and went fishing down there. So it was awesome. The one thing about cancer, it gave me more time to do a lot of stuff that I wanted to do that you never get to do because football is 24/7, 365.
Coach, so you're currently in the first days of training camp with the Houston Cougars. Kind of what does your daily routine look like as of right now?
I get up at 4. I get in, 4:30. I train, because if I'm in the shape I'm in with stage 4, if I wait to, late at night, it's not going to happen. So I do it first when I have the energy to do it. Then I have breakfast. We have breakfast check, training room, locker room. And where I usually do is I have 3 training tables up here where I work on athletes to get them ready to practice. So I do a lot of tempering, a lot of flossing, a lot of fascial scraping, and get as much blood flow to their body so they're not stiff, where they can move. So when they get to practice, as soon as they start moving, they feel a lot better in the movement process. So I'll work on them until 7 when they go into a position meeting. And then at 7:45, we go out to practice. We're done about 9:35, 9:40. Once you get through, almost 10 o'clock, once you get through talking to, everybody has to talk, they're equipment guys, trainers, I got to tell them, what's going on for the rest of the day. And then we go in and have lunch around 10:30, 10:45. Then there's a little space and time in the middle of the day before I have staff at 3:30. Usually I'll work on guys or do emails, anything they have to do in the office, get that done before the staff meeting. Then we go straight from staff meeting to dinner at 4:15. Come out of that, go straight into team meeting. Come out of that about 5:30, 5:45, and then go into meetings and then walkthroughs till about 7 probably, and then snack. I'll probably leave here about 7:45 to go home. So and it's when you're healthy, it's tough, but when you're fighting what I'm fighting, it's really tough. You get really tired. So I'll fall asleep. In that break, if I don't have any athletes, I'll sleep for 30 or 40 minutes so I can finish the rest of the day.
Coach, I'm going to make a little adjustment. I had one question, but you talked about we're fighting what you're fighting. What are you fighting, and how has that fight been?
Stage 4, 1, but it's liver and lung. So had a big lung, in a big tumor in between the lungs, in the sternum, kind of pressing against the heart. And then I think 4 or 5 metastasized tumors on my liver. And one, pushes against the bile ducts. So the liver, it's hard for the liver to drain. And I was at one point, I was distended I looked like I was, had twins. I looked like I was 8 months pregnant because the liver wasn't draining. And went through immunotherapy. It didn't work. Then they found out, only could happen to me, I have a blood disorder that kind of fights chemo and fights immunotherapy, like to where it doesn't work. So they put me on like an experimental drug called Morcovia that's supposed to help. But I started doing like day one. I mean, as soon as I found out that I had cancer, I started doing everything holistically. I mean, that's, I researched, I read probably 5 or 6 oncology books, read books of oncologists who beat cancer and different people who beat cancer have been in remission for over 12 to 18 years. I didn't look at short term. I looked at the long term, cases. So I came up with like my own basically cocktail of supplements. Most of it's like heavy anti-inflammatories that are all natural. And then I do hyperbaric chamber twice a week. I have a lymphatic massage therapist that helps drain. I mean, working with them within 3 days, I'm working on it. My liver completely drained. I do red light therapy to knock down inflammation. I'll do some ozone blood therapy. I do saunas, at night. When I get home, sweat as much toxins as I can out of my body. And the heat helps. There are certain things cancer can't live in. They can't live in an oxidative state. So that's where the hyperbaric chamber comes in. And they can't live in an alkaline state either. So, anything over an 8 pH. So I have an alkaline dispenser hooked up to my water, to my faucet. So I drink a ton of alkaline water. I do, baking soda with lemon and water. And it almost, when you put it together, it's like an Alka-Seltzer. And you shoot it 4 times a day. It changes your pH value in your blood. And so I went from about 10 or 12 weeks ago, I couldn't walk 15, 20 yards without having to sit down, where I would just I couldn't breathe. And the tumor in my chest, I'd breathe like this all day long. Like I could never get any air into my lungs. And to go as far as I've come, and I don't think it's the chemo, because I'm doing chemo. I don't think it's the chemo, the Morcovia, as much as I think it's all the other holistic stuff that I'm doing that's helping me beat cancer.
Coach, what kind of diet in terms, I know you talked about alkaline water, but in terms of just eating, your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, have you changed your diet as well?
Yeah, that's the worst thing. I don't know how vegetarians aren't the most angry human beings on the planet. I really don't. If I was just a strict vegetarian my whole life, I would be one angry human, because especially in Texas, man. You love meat. I grew up hunting, fishing. Everything was meat. So it's like a lot of raw vegetables, a lot of juice vegetables, and a little bit of fruit. Because you got to watch your sugar intake, because cancer feeds off of sugar. That's the first pathway. So if you can knock down sugar, starve it from sugar, it's going to go to IGF, which is your glutamine, and protein. So then it'll start feeding off your protein. So I can't have a lot of protein. I try to stick to 4 ounces like twice a week just to maintain my sanity. And then once it can't have protein, it's going to go to cholesterol. So you can't have your fat intake really high, except for with like avocado oil, olive oil, and different and pecans or cashews or almonds. And so it's that part of the diet. And I went from 190 to 143. So and when you don't eat any calorically dense food, it's hard to get your weight back up. I finally got back up to 150. I think it's mostly because of the way I started lifting. I just my doctor said, my oncologist said, okay, you don't lift, you do some stretching or yoga and walk. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. So she doesn't know I'm working, and she doesn't know I'm lifting either. So I just started, I think movement's key. I think people go home and they just don't move. They have cancer and they're depressed and they don't move. And I look at it as a blessing. I look at it as, God gave me this challenge. And I look at it as, okay, this is the greatest fight ever. So it's like, for me, it's like, okay, you're giving me a world championship bout that's like greater than the Super Bowl, greater than the NBA championship, greater than the Olympics. And I was just like, okay, it's on. Let's go. Like the gladiator arena. So that's how I always looked at it. I didn't look at even when I broke a rib. That's how I found out that I had cancer, and we had to go get an X-ray. And our Houston's ortho, he's like called me up when I was on my way home. Said, on a FaceTime. I was like, why are you FaceTiming me? He goes, and he was like gray. I could tell something was wrong. I said, Doc, what's wrong? He goes, dude, you got a tumor in your lungs, and you got 4 or 5 on your liver. You need to turn around and go to the hospital and get a better image. And I, right then and there, I said, look, give me the ND Anderson. Who do I talk to? I didn't even blink. And he actually, 3 weeks later, we had a spring game, and he goes, Kurt, I've never seen anybody just not even be fazed by it. And I wasn't. I was just like, I never said, woe is me. Why has this happened to me? I just said, okay, it's a fight. Let's go. And that mentality has driven me to do all the stuff that I'm doing, to do all the research, to train when I don't feel like training, to move when I don't feel like moving, to put weight on my back that I really don't want to put on my back, to carry weighted stuff around the neighborhood, to just keep moving, because I feel like if my legs are strong I'll always move. And if I move, I win the fight. If I don't, I'm going to lay down like everybody else does and die. And at one point, I think it was like 9 weeks ago, my oncologist said, Kurt, go home, make peace with your family, get your will in order, and call hospice. And I was just staring at her like, what? You tell me to go? And she's like, I said, are you telling me to go home and die? Well, I'm not saying that. I said, well, you just said it. in those 3 sentences. I said, you just said it. And so I was so annoyed, with her that I was like, okay. For me, it was like, through the process, my wife's like, you got to stay alive until you marry your son, because I married all 3 of my kids. And so got through his wedding. Then my middle daughter had my first grandson. Okay, you got to stay alive for the grandson. And then so then I was like, okay. And then she goes, grandson's born, healthy. What are you going to stay alive for? I said, spite. She's like, spite? Yeah, spite my oncologist. I'm not going to die. Just
wow. Wow. I want to say something, Coach, real quick, because there was a quote. I follow you on social media, and on July 6th, I noticed on your Facebook, you used a hashtag Unbreakable, and you basically said with that hashtag, death is undefeated, but I will take it to triple overtime. Where do you find that fight? Was it how you were born, you're raised? Like, where does that come from?
I mean, and even Coach Fritz asked me, like, Kurt, how were you raised? I was like, a lot. My dad and mom were divorced when I was very young, and I lived with my grandmother a lot of my life. And I just, you grew up in South Louisiana where everybody's blue collar, hardworking. You just work hard at everything you do. And I just don't, it just is like second nature to me. I don't think about it. And, it's the same thing with relationships. How you develop relationships? I don't know. I'm me all day, and it's just kind of the same way with fighting the cancer. I'm just me, maybe a little bit on steroids, like times 10 because of the cancer. So I push everything to the limit, with it. And it's a 24-hour-a-day battle, so, I try to get it out of my head. And the only time I really can get it out of my head is when I'm with the team. It's like, so I'm thinking about them. So, I mean, I just don't, it's just second nature, and that's how I look at it. I look at it as it's just another fight. I mean, I grew up, we'd beat each other up at the bus stop for fun, before we got on the bus. We'd be all bloody, shirts ripped off. And that's just like, it wasn't like we're best friends and we just fought for fun. That was just, so it wasn't, it's like second nature to me. I've been in martial arts for a long time and different styles. I really started out with the Ishiru, then Hamudo, which is Korean. Then during COVID, jiu-jitsu, but I really like Muay Thai. I like stand up. I'd rather be standing up and moving than laying on the ground with somebody on top of me. So I kind of gravitated towards Muay Thai more than anything. So it's just, I guess it's just ingrained. It's not how I was raised. It's not anything anybody told me. And I have this refusal. I have this really like where I not that I don't want to lose, but I'm never going to quit on anything. You know, a lot of people say I hate to lose more than I like to win. I just, my mind just, you never quit. And, you know, sports is hard. You know, if you're not playing, it's hard not to, it's hard to stay in it mentally. Marriage is even the hardest. You know, a lot of people want to give up and quit on marriage. And as soon as it gets hard, they're out.
Wow.
And a marriage is like, you know, for me, marriage, you know, especially in that middle 30 to, 28 to 40 range. And that's when most people get divorced. And that's like your hardest years to stay married. And once you get through that, it's relatively easier, you know, but people quit. And, you know, as hard as, you know, sometimes being married is, I just refuse. I'll never quit. I will, you might as well put a bullet in my head because I'm not stopping.
Coach, you talked a lot about adversity. And we all go through adversity, but how has this adversity changed your perspective?
I think it's, you value relationships more. I mean, not just family. Like people go, oh, family first. And yeah, you do, you always value your family and you always want to spend more time with your family, but you value relationships that you built. Like your locker room, typically you're stay best friends with a lot of those guys. And I didn't realize, how many guys that I really stayed close to and really, would, call me, write me, motivate me. That's like, it just kind of, you kind of reorganize your brain to, okay, these relationships mean a lot. Spend more time cultivating these relationships. Spend more time cultivating relationship with your wife and your kids. And it just kind of, it's not that you got too far away from it. It's just you kind of rededicate yourself to it.
Great point there, Coach. I want to say I've been a strength coach for 23 years. And the longer I do it, the more I realize that results are temporary and relationships are eternal. So I've chased bench numbers. I've chased 40-yard dash and vertical jumps and guys like Sam Acho that I was blessed to train for the NFL Combine. But at some point, it's hit me that it's the relationships in coaching that is most important. And I know you are living that out right now. And I want to speak about, I was able to watch you last month in New Orleans when Will Bartholomew, the founder, CEO of D1 Sports Training, brought you up on stage at the National Coaching Summit, and they honored you with an incredible award. What did that mean to you?
I mean, being like, the first, like I wrote the business plan for Will because I trained Will for the draft, and I wrote his business plan in a IHOP, the Super Bowl in New Orleans when Brady beat the Rams. That's how I remember it, because it was like I sat down, wrote the whole business plan, and I went across the lake to the game. And so, I've been with, him on I helped him the first 2 years just for free, just like fly to Nashville, help him build it out. And then when Katrina hit, didn't know what was going to happen to South Louisiana. And that's when I went on board with D1 and to help it build out. I think when I left, we were at like 30 facilities. And to working in a company, you're going to, have high powered people in the company all over the place. You're going to have your fights, you're going to have people, tough and I'm pretty straightforward and pretty reality guy. A lot of people can't handle that. So, I had, issues like anybody else in any company, especially when I ran one of the first standalone facilities in the entire country for the draft. And I mean, we trained 500 athletes a day, back in, 1996, so, it was great. It was great getting the award. They, their National Strength Coach of the Year is the Kurt Hester Honorary Strength Coach of the Year from year on out. And, it's just what I didn't realize more than that was how many people I affected. Like my wife goes, do you realize, because I hit it for like almost 2 months. I thought I could fight it by myself. I thought I could, let me focus and I can fight this by myself. When I was beyond wrong, and just kind of hiding it was kind of weighing on me more than anything. And just the amount of coaches from the UK, from Australia, from Poland, and around America, and just the different athletes I've trained. I've trained over 12,000 athletes in my facility, in one facility in South Louisiana. And the amount of those athletes that would write these long letters about what it meant to train there. And so she's like, you don't realize you run around like an idiot all day long, and you don't realize how you affect other people because you're just being you, and you don't even think about anything. You just do, you just go. And I never thought in those terms of, I've got to affect all these people. I just tried to help as many people as I could. And I never looked at it as me mentoring. It was just me helping somebody who had a problem. And so I never, that thought never crossed my mind until like on Facebook, on Instagram, on X, just the amount, and it got almost really tiring because I felt like I had to respond to everyone. And it was like 50 or 60 a day, for 7, 8 straight weeks. And so, that in itself was tiring, but it was very gratifying, and to have that at 61 years old, that you did that much, throughout your career, which I never really equated it to it.
Coach, you talked about that support, but what does that support actually mean to you?
It like I told my wife, I'm like the guy that I can't. It's like I feel like I've never asked anybody for anything. I've always just went out and got it. Like whatever I wanted, whatever I needed, I just went and worked for it. So to accept money or to accept anything is real. It's mentally hard for me. It's not that I'm like above it. It's not like I'm. It's not that it wasn't the way I was raised. It's just this block of, that I don't know. I just look at it as the only way I can pay him back is to lift heavy stuff, put it on video, to carry heavy stuff, to not die. Just don't die, and that's how I pay him back. Because I feel like I have to pay him back, and so that's kind of why the campaign is like me doing. Like I couldn't squat the bar, 12 weeks ago. I couldn't squat the bar three times. So 45 pounds, I couldn't squat it. And then I hit 95 for a couple of sets of 3. And then I hit a couple of weeks later, I hit 205 for a couple of sets of 3. Then I hit, then I hit 225. And, so now it's like, okay, my goal is to hit 275. And I only weigh 150 pounds right now. Yeah. And so at that light of a weight, and then I'm an RDL probably next week. I'm an RDL 225, and people, at 150 pounds. So, it's just, that's how I feel I pay them back is by doing moronic stuff that some, stage 4 cancer guys should not be doing, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Wow, Coach, I know that there's so many fitness companies and other strength coaches throughout the country who are sharing your story. And I know Sorinex just started selling T-shirts with Unbreakable on it. To see so many people rally around you, it just shows the respect that those in our profession, those in the strength and conditioning profession, have for someone like yourself. I guess Unbreakable, that word, is that a word that you've always kind of lived by or given a hashtag to, or is that something that you've just kind of taken on as you started this journey?
Yeah, it was when she told me to go home and die. I was like, you won't break me. You can't break me. And so I was like, you can't break me. In my brain, you can't break me. I'm unbreakable. And that's where I got it from.
And Coach, before we let you go, I got 2 things. First, recently you were quoted in the Houston Chronicle talking about your faith. How has your faith grown because of the recent diagnosis?
I think it's kind of like, it's like that thing in my brain about quitting. It's like a rededication. So I never really got far away from the church, but with coaching, it is just so time consuming. Went to a Baptist church, and his whole first message was he related it back to working out, and I was like, oh, I think I walked to the right place, And so August 12th, I'm gonna get rebaptized. So I was baptized when I was like 4 months old, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna completely reconnect. So it's just kind of like reconnecting with the church, reconnecting with God, reconnecting with Jesus. It's more of a reconnection, and I've read the Bible from forwards and backwards. My great grandfather, he was Catholic and learned how to read English off the Bible, and so I've always been Methodist, and now I'm at a Baptist church that I really connect with, and my family does too. And I study the Bible every day. I take notes, and just like you take notes in programming, and I try to, and that's what's kind of whenever I'm hurting really bad, or I don't want to get up and move, I just like talk to God, and I say, give me the strength. I got to roll today. We're on the third floor, so I refuse to take the elevator. So it's like an insane, it's 2 floors of stairs straight up with an insane angle, and man, it doesn't feel good. It kills me. Every time I walk up it, and I probably had to walk up it 20 times a day. Last week trying to open up the weight room, and I just asked God, "Hey, get me up the stairs." Every time I had to go up it.
So I got one question, and then Clif's going to close us. Coach, I cover college football. I'm with the SVN. I cover Houston. I'm excited about you all this season. What are you most excited about as far as your football team goes this season?
It's just seeing how they mature throughout the season, to see what, when they go through adversity, how they're going to react, through any situation, through any game. It's kind of like this right now. I look at body language. I look at their verbiage, all through camp, and how they talk to each other, and because in this day and age of the portal, we got 40 new guys, and I had to mesh them into a one fighting unit, and it's hard when it's a me generation. But we talk about community, not family. I think family's overused. So we talk about the community of our academics, our medical staff, our football staff, our administration, and how we, because we want our guys you're going to get your degree here. You're going to go to class. You're going to go to every class. You're going to go to study hall. You're going to go to tutoring. And then and if you don't make it in the NFL, we're going to help you find your first job. So that means a lot to us as a staff. A lot of people talk about it, but they're not about it. And we're completely about it. Coach Fritz is old school when it comes to how he runs the team, as very disciplined. And like we talked about it, when the portal came out, I said, Coach, we can still build a team. Everybody's complaining about they can't build culture and build a team. We can do it if we maintain our discipline, if we still build our community out and go get the right guys. Don't just go get the best football players, just get the right guys. And they did a good job of recruiting some great kids. So seeing them mature throughout the season, more than the wins, that's what I'm excited about. That's what I'm looking at. Because if they're better humans and they mature, we're going to win. We have enough talent.
Last question I got for you. I took a couple of cliff notes. I like to do that every podcast. One cliff note that I had that really touched me is when you said death is undefeated, but I'm going to take it to triple overtime, unbreakable. That is something that I'll never forget. The second cliff note that I had for you is actually a quote from Pastor Billy Graham. And it says, a coach will impact more people in 1 year than the average person will in a lifetime. And Kurt, I've known you for 15 years, but I actually got to spend time with you in New Orleans last month. You've impacted my life and thousands of others more than you would know. So keep fighting the good fight. The race, you're in the main event.
Yeah.
Everybody's watching you. Everybody's praying for you. We're pulling for you. And you are an inspiration. So thank you.
You're welcome. I won this battle day of diagnosis. I had one in my head. That day.
Man.
So good. Well, Coach, we appreciate you. We're so grateful for your time. We know you're in the middle of training camp, getting your team ready, getting your body ready, yourself ready. But we're so grateful for you, for your time and your story. And as Cliff said, we're rooting you on.
I appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir. And thank you all so much for listening to the Sam Acho podcast featuring Clif Marshall. We can't wait to see you soon.